I believe firmly that we either are the disruptors or we're the ones that are being disrupted.
I was like, you know what? God built me to be this leader. Why am I always hiding behind other people? Let me just step up and do it. And it's like, from that point on, I just got comfortable.
But in those moments when I needed to step out and be on stage and have this high energy that perhaps wasn't naturally me, I could assume this persona. And I found that with this persona, all things were possible.
For me, it's like, if I have something to share with the team, I need to make sure I hit every single point as efficiently as possible.
I believe that it's important to reach back and lend a helping hand because I stand on the shoulders of giants.
Dr. Wylecia Wiggs Harris, how are you doing today?
I am doing wonderful. I'm doing wonderful.
So can I call you Wylecia, or do you want to go by Dr. Wiggs Harris? Are we friends yet? Can we do that?
Yeah, I think we can go with the Wylecia angle.
Wylecia? Okay, perfect. Well, Wylecia, thank you so much for having us in your home office here in Chicago. I've been super excited to have a conversation with you. We're going to be chatting about leadership, and you are one of those powerhouse leaders I've been dying to chat with.
Oh, thank you. I really love to talk about leadership, so I'll probably talk your ear off.
Oh, perfect. This is the podcast, so that's all good. So I like to start off my episodes with something called street cred. So it's kind of like your 2, 3, 5, however long you need to kind of tell me about yourself and the things that make you you that got you to this position here today.
Well, street cred, huh? Mm-hmm. Well, I can tell you about the degrees. I can tell you about all the different places that I've worked, but really street cred comes from faith and family. Those two things have really inspired how I look at leadership and how I try to treat people. And so the degrees really don't make a difference if you don't know how to really honor people and bring the best out of them. And I'll be honest, I didn't always know how to do that. And we'll talk later and I'll tell you about the fact that I was a reluctant leader. Well, part of being a reluctant leader means I've had an incredible journey. And there are peaks and there are valleys to leadership. And you have to do both of them, and you learn from both of them. So I think my street cred is just the fact that I'm authentic. What you see is what you get. I don't put on airs for anyone. You could be the President of the United States sitting here and I'd still be having the exact same conversation with you.
So what does being a reluctant leader mean to you? Because I kind of feel like I was trying not to be a reluctant leader.
I never wanted to lead. I wasn't someone who was raising their hands and say, look at me, I want to be a leader. But what I did do is that when opportunities presented themselves, I always said yes when others said no. And then one day I woke up and said, well, maybe this is not such a bad thing. I was so incredibly shy when I was getting my MBA that the very act of raising my hand, I couldn't do. But Professor Levengood, and I will always remember his name, he would look at me and she knows the answer.
Yeah.
She just doesn't have the courage to say it. And so between Professor Levengood and a wonderful mentor I had when I worked at the American Heart Association, John Paul, they began to pull me out of some of that introversion and that shyness and to help me understand why it was important to have my voice in the room.
Gotcha. So was there a defining moment in your life where you were like, all right, I've been reluctant, but now I'm going to get after it and I'm going to attack this and be a leader? Was there one thing that happened and made you change your mind?
I don't know if there was one thing, but I got some good advice from John Paul. And he had me to go into training and organizational development. And I was like, why? I want to be an executive. And he's like, trust me. And so I did. And one of the things I discovered is that when you go into training, you can take on a persona that's different than who you are. And so I was able to take on a persona, Chloe B.
Why'd you pick Chloe B?
I don't know.
It has a nice ring to it, though.
I know it does have a nice ring, doesn't it? I don't know why I chose Chloe B. But in those moments when I needed to step out and be on stage and have this high energy that perhaps wasn't naturally me, I could assume this persona. And I found that with this persona, all things were possible. Well,
Real quick, let's talk about your position here. So you were the CEO of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, what traits about yourself do you think they saw and loved about you that got you in this role?
See, I thought you were going to ask the opposite question. What did I love about the academy that
we can
brought
get
me
there.
here?
We can get
No,
there.
that's fine. You know, that would really be a great question for them. But if I had to guess, I think it was authenticity. I had a demonstrated leadership record, so I was able to really paint the picture of what I've done in the past and be able to say, and this is similar to what I may be able to do for you in the future. I think the authentic nature, because I told them the same thing that I said to you, what you see is what you get. And if you like what you see today in the interview process, then this is who you can expect to show up if you choose to hire me.
Okay, so I guess more importantly, why did you choose them?
I love the fact that this is an organization committed to ensuring that no matter whether you are in the U.S. or whether you're globally, you are able to have access to food, and that we are here to improve the nutritional health of individuals.
Okay.
So I was attracted to the mission. I also have a keen interest in health equity and social determinants of health. And I thought that this would be a platform that allowed me to really address the things that I have an interest in, along with supporting a wonderful organization.
Great. And just to kind of jump back to one of your comments earlier, you said that you were an introvert. So I'm also an introvert. And do you think that being an introvert actually gives you an advantage in some situations as opposed to someone who isn't?
Perhaps. I think whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, there's value to that, whatever leadership style you may have. I tell people I'm a socialized extrovert because most people don't believe that I'm an introvert. What I do believe my introversion allows me to do is to be a really good active listener. I listen well to people. I listen not only for what the words, but I listen for the intent behind the words. I think my introversion also allows me to think deeply. And often it can look as if I've made decisions very quickly. And it's because I think deeply and I take the time to consider the pros and the cons and what happens if we do this and what happens if we don't do this. And then I'm in action. And it's like, wow, where did this come from? She's moving at such a pace. Not really. I've taken the time to do the upfront work, the upfront due diligence, and then when I'm in motion and I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I love that so much. Something that's important to me is mentorship. I understand that I am young and I'm inexperienced and I'm always learning and always seeking people that have done this before so I can learn from their mistakes and maybe not make the same ones. So do you have any mentors that you've been with for the past few years, or are you a mentor?
I do have mentors, and I am a mentor.
Where do I sign up to be a mentee?
Just tell me you want to be one. I try to support anyone who asks me to mentor them, but I will say that mentorship works both ways. You may be young, and yet with your youth comes wisdom of a different type. You have a different set of experiences, and our lived experiences are important regardless of what age we may be on the continuum. And in many ways, age is just a number.
Yeah.
So I've been fortunate to have some amazing mentors throughout my life. And one of the things that I did during 2020 is I actually went back and found the key mentors in my life to say thank you. Because I think it's important to reach back and to say thank you. And I had an amazing mentor when I was working for a company called Technicare. It was a J&J subsidiary. The organization no longer exists. But Mike is the individual who taught me how to present to executive leaders. And he taught me how to have a confidence, you know, that fake it till you can make it
I like
scenario.
to believe it till you achieve it.
Yeah. And so he was the hardest one to find. I was able to find everyone else pretty easily. He actually found me on LinkedIn because he said, "Are you the same Wylecia Wiggs?" Because at that point I wasn't married when I knew him, who gave me this little trinket. And he had moved to France or some part of France. And he had found this little trinket that I had given him to say thank you. And he reached out to me, and it was just so wonderful to connect with him and to be able to tell him the impact that he has had on my life. I've also had an opportunity to mentor some outstanding individuals who have gone on to be CEOs in their own right. And so I believe that it's important to reach back and lend a helping hand because I stand on the shoulders of giants. There are many people who made sacrifices so that I could sit here today and have this conversation with you.
Yeah.
And I never want to be the type of individual who believes that I made it on my own because I didn't.
Yeah.
And there's still people today, I like to use the phraseology, pour into you. There are still people today who pour into me and who make sure that my voice is represented in a room even when I may physically not be in that room.
So what would you say to somebody who takes offense to the term, we stand on the shoulders of giants? Because I have actually said that to somebody and they took offense to it and they were like, no, like we're here because of me. And I'm like, no, like we're here because of the team. It's all about the team surrounding us. Like this wouldn't work without you, without them, and so on and so forth. So how do you respond to something like that?
You know, everyone has a different perspective. My perspective truly is that it takes a village. Mm-hmm. And my effectiveness as a leader is built on my ability to cultivate the right environment so that people can thrive. It isn't just me. And for me, leadership is about other focus. It's not about self-focus. So I don't put down those individuals who have a different perspective. My desire is to be a purpose-driven leader. And those of us who choose to be purpose-driven leaders, we know that we didn't get to where we are by ourselves. There are people who reached back and provided us a helping hand. We know it that we sit where we are because of the teams that surround us. That was some of the best advice that I got from a mentor. Never be afraid to hire people who are smarter than you. Always surround yourself with good people.
Yeah.
And always take care of good people.
Absolutely. Do you care to give us any of the tips that Mike shared with you about speaking to executives?
Be precise. Be concise. Make sure you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Anticipate the questions that they're going to ask. Many execs, myself included, we are very impatient. Mm-hmm. We're not looking for the dissertation.
Yeah.
I've written the 300-page dissertation. That's not what I want to hear. I want to understand what's the issue and what's your recommendation to resolve the issue. We're listening for the sound bites because we have so many decisions that we have to make. And what I looked for my teams to do is to give me enough of the sound bite to either make an informed decision at that particular moment or at least to know the questions that I need to ask and send them back to gather additional information and to bring forward to me.
So let's turn the tables. When you're communicating to your team, how do you communicate? Because something that I'm learning is that I'm not a detailed guy, right? And I'm kind of vague whenever I ask for something, but I'm starting to realize I need to do a better job of respecting my time and my team's time. So like for me, it's like if I have something to share with the team, I need to make sure I hit every single point as efficiently as possible. Is that something that you do, or do you have any other tips?
So Ken Blanchard talks about situational leadership.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say it my way, not his way, and it's really meeting people where they are.
Okay.
Someone who's new in their position, they need more direction from us as leaders than someone who's seasoned and you can just delegate to. Mm-hmm. Now, that first quadrant of making sure that you're providing enough information for individuals to be successful, I'll be the first person to tell you I don't always do that well.
Yeah.
I want to skip that phase and go straight to delegating, but that is not always in the best interest of the individuals we serve from a leadership perspective, and it's not even always in our best it's not always best for us either as leaders.
Yeah.
So a long time ago, I had someone share with me the importance of being direct, kind, and honest. And you need to be all three of them. So to the best of your ability, be direct and clear in what you're communicating to your teams. Be honest. People deserve honest feedback, even if it's tough feedback. Now, you do need to choose the moment in which you give that feedback.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're a little upset, it's not always the moment to be being so honest because you may struggle to be kind in that moment. but also to make sure that you're being kind. It's never good to just rip a person apart. I mean, we're human beings, and we have the pleasure of being leaders, and we hold people's hearts and souls in our hands. And therefore, we should always be kind in our interactions with people. Now, again, do I always do that right? No, I don't. What I do try to do, though, is when I don't do it right, I try to fix it.
Gotcha.
I don't struggle with apologizing. I apologize for when I mess up. I apologize for when other people mess up. Because a lot of times what people want is just to be heard, and they want an apology. And if you do that, they'll move on. But too often, leaders don't want to apologize. Too often, leaders don't want to accept accountability. And therefore, what was a small issue winds up becoming a much larger issue, whereas if we had just simply said, I'm sorry, sincerely. Because there's a difference between saying, I'm sorry just because I need you to go away, and I'm sorry because I really mean that I could have handled this situation better than what I did. Let's agree to start over and have a fresh start here.
When you're building your teams, do you specifically find people that can receive direct, clear, and honest feedback, or will you include somebody that you think you can maybe, I don't know, help them to grow to receive that sort of feedback?
So often we are inheriting teams. And so there is a difference between the team that one inherits and the team that one ultimately builds. I like to be clear on the expectations. And that was something that my executive coach worked with me on, specifically saying, I expect, because I did struggle to say those words. And what I find is that if you can be clear on the expectations, that many people can rise to the occasion of those expectations. But there will always be those, for whatever the reason, it's not a good fit. It doesn't make them a bad person if it's just not a good fit for this particular team. So the question then becomes, how do you compassionately convey to someone, this is not a good fit, and perhaps we need to look for other opportunities. And unfortunately, those opportunities will be external to the organization.
Was there ever a period in time where you were uncomfortable delivering direct, honest feedback to people?
Yes, and sometimes I'm still.
It's the toughest thing.
It's a tough
so
thing.
Hard.
It's tough. It's very tough, especially when you have to deal with thorny performance issues. I mean, it's one thing if you've got a great performer and you just need to pull their coattail and say, hey, Marlon, you could have done that better. What was going on with you that day? That's not a big deal. But when I have to say, Marlon, you are not performing at the level I need for you to perform, and we need to have a really sincere conversation about whether or not this is a good fit, that's a hard conversation. If I'm honest with people, I've cried through letting people go. And I know this leader should never cry. Well,
you got a heart too, right?
Yeah, I got a heart. I got a heart, and I lead with my heart.
And you're a servant leader, so that makes it
right. And I never take pleasure in destroying someone's livelihood. I will never take pleasure in that. I grew up with a lot of notions around what leadership was or was not, whether that came from business school, because going back to your comment about being young, my first leadership team that I joined, I was the youngest individual on that team. I was the only female on that team, and I was the only person of color on that team.
Oh, wow.
And
the trifecta.
The trifecta. And there were a lot of hard lessons that I learned. And therefore, I tried to take on the persona of my other colleagues who sat around that table to fit in. And that didn't work for me. And I don't think it works for many people. You have to be true to yourself. You have to be true to your values. And I think once you understand how to navigate whatever environment you find yourself in while still being true to yourself, that's when you really begin to elevate your leadership profile and your leadership stance.
Yeah, there was definitely a time in my life where I thought that I had to be like other people, to be on camera or to do podcasts or to do whatever, to lead, right? And I never felt comfortable, and it never really worked out the way I wanted it to work. And I was still being a reluctant leader, trying to be somebody else. And then there was a moment where I was like, you know what? God built me to be this leader. Why am I always hiding behind other people? Let me just step up and do it. And it's like, from that point on, I just got comfortable. Like, I could be an introvert, and then I could still be a leader. I could be an introvert. I could still be on camera or doing interviews and all that. But this is who I'm supposed to be. So let me just go ahead and be that person. Then it's like a switch that's flipped, and now I'm good with me finally.
Right. So you found your leadership voice.
Yeah.
And my hope for you is that you never lose your leadership voice. It's not fun when you do that.
So what are some things that I need to be wary of so I don't lose it?
So when I was in my 20s, I had a strong sense of who I was and a strong leadership voice.
Yeah.
And then I began to climb the corporate ladder. And as I began to climb the corporate ladder within the nonprofit sector, I found myself taking on the attributes of leadership that others ascribe to. I went from the bright shoes and the bright colors to the dark suits and the
You sound so much like
more
me.
conservative look. And in some ways, those sound like really small things.
Yeah.
But it's like every time I stopped doing something that gave me joy, every time I stopped acting and accepting who I was to try to be like Joe or Mary, I lost a part of who I was, and I lost my leadership voice. It wasn't clear. It wasn't strong. I wasn't confident. I suffered from imposter syndrome. And that's why I encourage young people, don't lose your voice, no matter what life throws at you. Be clear on who you are, and be clear on the value that you bring, and fight hard to not have society take that away from you.
I feel like so often today, society tells young leaders who they are supposed to be. And I fear for my kids having to grow up in a world where society is like that. It's scary. Yeah.
It is scary. It is scary. But stand firm.
Yeah.
Stand firm. Now, I feel that I have my voice back and it's stronger than ever. I still fight not to lose that voice. I still fight not to give in to other people's expectations of who I should be and how I should conduct and carry myself as a leader. I'm at a good place in life where I understand I'm exactly who I was meant to be. And I'm the type of leader that I was meant to be. And so my type of leadership is a leadership of love. But my husband is also a great, what do I want to say? He keeps me humbled and it keeps me leveled. And then my siblings do the same thing. They will say, well, I'm sorry, you can just leave that CEO perspective. You leave that at work. My husband's like, don't bring that into this house.
Yeah.
Well, that of course was pre-COVID before I started working at home. So now I do bring it into the house.
Oh, yeah.
But especially my younger brother, it's just like, no.
Yeah.
We're not having a CEO level conversation here, so you just need to back down and remember you're one of us.
Yeah.
It's very helpful to have a spouse that's supportive and at the same time helps you to stay humble. I mean, because you just think about it, all day long there are people who are calling on your name and they're elevating you, although I work hard not to be elevated. I want to be, how I treat people is how I want to be treated. I don't want to stand on a title.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Do you ever deal with decision fatigue?
Of course. Of course. We have this conversation about I'm an introvert. And there are times when I make decisions very quickly and very rapidly. And there are other times when I know my teams are like, can't she make a decision on this?
Yeah.
Why is she dragging this decision out? And normally it's when it's a value-based decision. Those are the decisions that I make much, much slower. Again, going to the fact that if I'm going to impact someone's livelihood, I'm not going to rush to make those types of decisions. I'm going to make sure I've thought about every possible way around before having to pull that type of trigger.
So how do you deal with the weight of the pressure of being a leader?
That's a great question. How do I deal with the pressure of being a leader? I've learned the importance of self-care. and taking care of myself, decompressing.
Okay. How do you decompress?
I love British television.
British
I wish
television. All right.
I
What's your favorite show?
oh my gosh, what have I just finished watching? Well, a lot of what's on British television are cop shows.
Okay.
So I watch a lot of cop shows. Of course, I was a Downton Abbey fan
Yeah.
at the height of the day. I watch a lot of mysteries.
So did you get into this at a young age, or is it recent?
It's not recent. I probably got into British television a decade ago.
Okay.
Because when I was working on my doctorate, there was no time at all
Yeah.
to take care of oneself. And I feel as if as soon as I walked across that stage and they gave me that degree, is probably when I started my binge watching rather. I also exercise, so
Okay.
that helps too. I enjoy walking.
Okay.
I mean, treadmills are great, ellipticals are great, but I love walking outside and feeling the rays of the sunshine on my face.
Mm-hmm.
When there is sunshine
there
in
is sun,
Chicago. I love the fall,
Do you have a favorite place to walk?
the park, or my neighborhood.
Okay. I don't know if you were like an outdoor hiker or anything like that.
No, I don't like snakes.
Well, don't come to Florida then. You got a bunch of those.
I know, yeah.
All right, so British television and exercise.
And exercising sometimes. I enjoy cooking.
Okay. Do you have a favorite dish you like to cook?
So I'm a Southern cook.
Okay.
I grew up in a Southern family, so I do love the traditional things of cornbread and collard greens. I've just learned how to make them healthier most times of the year, but during the Christmas holidays when I do traditional food. I love fish,
Yeah.
generally just about any type of fish, and I don't really care how it's prepared. I just love fish.
What's your favorite fish though? If you had to have, if we had
My
one fish to.
favorite fish today is branzino.
Okay.
Now, if you asked me that growing up, I probably would have said catfish.
Really? Like a fried catfish or?
There's nothing better than a
Really?
fried
That's
catfish.
I couldn't stand fish growing up until I came across sea bass. Now
Oh, I do love sea
I would
bass,
choose a
too.
sea bass over a steak a lot of days. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in a military family, so I've lived a number of different places. I graduated from high school in Stuttgart, Germany.
Wow.
I call Columbia, South Carolina home because that's where mom and dad are, and I'm very fortunate.
Okay.
Both of my parents are still living, so dad is 87 and mom is 86.
Cool.
And so they have had such a deep influence on my life, along with their parents, had such
Yeah.
a deep influence in terms of shaping my value system and my work ethic.
How do you like Germany?
You know, I wish I could say that I loved the thought of going to Germany.
Mm-hmm.
That would not be true.
Okay.
I'd started my junior year in high school, and I was ripped away from my friends. And I tried it. My negotiating skills were not very good at that time because, of course, I
hope
was
they've
on
gotten
that
better.
plane with the rest
Yeah.
of the family going to Germany. Once I got to Germany, I had satisfied all of my graduation credits except for one.
Mm-hmm.
So here I am, a 17-year-old working for the USO, traveling around Europe.
Wow.
So by that time, I loved Germany.
Yeah, I bet.
Yes.
Yeah, my grandmother she's a retired nurse, and she actually almost moved to Germany after the war. So
Wow.
my family, like I was almost German. Yeah, but she said she loved it so much, she actually wanted to move, but they ended up coming to the States instead, which I think I'm okay with.
You know, I was in Germany when our world was different, because I recall walking at night by myself and never being fearful, because there you would start out as a large group and then people would peel off and go to their respective homes, and our barracks or the home that we were living in was at the bottom of the hill, so I was always the last one, but I never felt unsafe.
Okay. Yeah, times are definitely different now. I would not let my daughter walk around by herself, unfortunately.
Times are very different, and that's really sad.
What was your opinion of how do you like living in South Carolina? I actually spent about 4 years there recently, and Southern hospitality is a real thing. We
is
don't
a
have
real
that in
thing.
Florida.
It is
Not like that.
It's a real thing. I mean, I love the Carolinas, both South Carolina and North Carolina. One of the things I most love about South Carolina, it's a relatively small state, and Columbia sits in the center of the state. So you can be to different parts of Columbia or to North Carolina or to Georgia within a 2 to 3 hour time frame.
Yeah. Yeah, I was about an hour away from where you were. I was in North Augusta, South Carolina,
I
right there
know,
on the border.
I know North
Yeah.
Augusta very, very well. So sometimes if I'm trying to get from the suburbs into Chicago, that's 2 hours right there.
Yeah, it's a while. All right, so Germany to South Carolina, then to Texas, or was there someplace in between?
Germany to South Carolina to Ohio
Ohio,
for
okay.
undergrad
Okay.
because I was 18 and 18-year-olds are supposed to go to college.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what I did. I went to college and they had a college fair in Germany and I met this wonderful individual. Her name was Mary Lou Culp. See, I remember even decades later the people who have had such a profound impact on my life. And at the time I was pre-med and she described this campus to me and she painted this picture.
Yeah.
I love greenery. I really love the outdoors minus the snakes. And I fell in love with this campus through her eyes. And I only applied to 2 schools, one to placate my parents,
Yeah.
which was the University of South Carolina,
Okay.
and to Wittenberg University. And I loved my time at Wittenberg University. I met great people. I started charter line for Delta Sigma Theta there. I had an opportunity to serve on the Speakers Bureau and bring amazing speakers to campus.
That's great. So you were on the Speakers Bureau, but were you speaking at that time?
No, I wasn't speaking at that time.
Okay. You were terrified, like the same way I used to be terrified of speaking?
I was still terrified of speaking. I just have learned how to handle it better.
Yeah. So talk to me about the trifecta and how you overcame that being a young woman leader of color. Like, what was that like, climbing the ranks?
I think there's a naivete that comes with being young sometimes. I don't think I saw some of the barriers in my 20s that I would then subsequently see in my 30s and 40s. I think that when we're in our 20s, we honestly believe that we're unstoppable, no matter what the set of circumstances are. And that's how I felt.
Do you don't feel that way anymore?
I have a mature sense of that now.
Okay. All right.
And I'm not saying that in my 20s I was immature, that I was reckless. There was just a confidence that's of a different type of confidence than what I have right now. Because now I do see the realities of the world. I do see the challenges that, even if I'm not personally facing those challenges, that others are facing. And I was actually having this conversation with one of my nieces yesterday. My parents protected us so much. Even though I am a child that was born in the 60s, I didn't have a sense of what the 60s were like.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they managed to protect us as much as they did. I don't think that the realism of some of the things that other people were dealing with hit me until I was probably post-college.
Gotcha. I would say I had more of a reckless, not confidence. Like I was in my 20s, same way you said. But I feel like what I've learned is, I always say this to my team, is like, we don't live within the restrictions of this world because our power comes from elsewhere. All right. So I take that mentality and I kind of use that to kind of help me get past all the difficult or obstacles that people may think are difficult.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I am a risk taker. I will skate the edge. I'll never cross the line. I like to understand what my parameters are. Sometimes I will have to ask for forgiveness.
Yeah.
I am creative. I see things where others have not seen them yet. I'm not going to say they won't get there. I'm a big Star Trek fan, though.
Okay. Me too. Which is your favorite
All
series of
of
movies?
them.
All of them?
All of them.
Okay.
I just love Star Trek. I never necessarily wanted to be in the spaceship, up in the air, but I just, whether it was Jean-Luc or...
Jean-Luc was a man. Between him and Kirk. Those
Kirk,
are the two. But Jean-Luc.
and I think that my creativity goes back to some of those early shows. And I would always want to say, okay, well, you didn't take that scene far enough. If I had been the writer of that scene, this is what I would have done,
Yeah.
and this is how I would have created.
Yeah.
And so I think it's good to have an imagination. Sometimes our imaginations can lead us down pathways that are not healthy.
Yeah.
But I do believe there are healthy ways to take one's imagination to let them boost our spirits and to help to inform our decision making as leaders.
Would you consider yourself a disruptor? You're
Very
creative.
much.
Okay.
I am a disruptor.
So what are some of the things that you do to create innovation and to be disruptive? Like, how do you be disruptive and innovative in an organization at the size you guys are at right now?
Well, sometimes being the disruptor means that you're pushing people out of their comfort zones. And so I have this slide that I did for a presentation recently, and it shows a cocoon, and then it's like the metamorphosis of the butterfly.
Yeah.
And I had shared that you can't stay in the cocoon. There's the comfort of the cocoon. But I believe firmly that we either are the disruptors or we're the ones that are being disrupted. And if we're going to be the disruptors, then that really sometimes means going into the soul of an organization and ripping it apart and looking at how do you put it back together, not for the sake of just tearing something apart, but allowing that organization to really lean into its full potential and to still be relevant. I've had the pleasure of working with what I call legacy nonprofits. They're anywhere between 90 plus years old. And there are reasons why those organizations were created, and there are reasons why those organizations have existed for that number of years. And there are the startups. And the startups move at a speed that legacy organizations don't move at. And the startups are disrupting. And I'm a firm believer that if legacy organizations are still going to stand and have an opportunity to continue to do good work, then we have to be willing to push ourselves and look at doing things differently, whether that is a new business model, whether that is a new governance model, whether it's rethinking the purpose of the profession. I don't believe there should be any question that's off the table for discussion, because there's a difference between discussion and pulling the trigger on something. I'm not reckless, and there's a difference between being a risk taker and being reckless. I like to take calculated risk, but I push myself as well. I push myself to learn new things. I may not like it, I may not continue doing it, but I do want to learn how to do new things. And I can drive people crazy. I mean, when you're a CEO, there are people who always want to help you do things. Yeah. And that's great. But I want to know how to do my own expense reports.
Yeah.
I want to know how to do whatever XYZ is, because you never know when the person you depend on to do those things for you is out sick and you need to have something done. And then there are other things that, yeah, I've done it and I'm done with it.
Yeah.
So you can
Let me
take
delegate this.
Let me delegate this. I'm not good at this. I like to understand and play in my lane and understand what my superpowers are.
Yeah. Do you think it's possible for a legacy organization, like a large organization, to have the soul of a startup?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. Is it easy? It's not.
Yeah.
It means we have to let go of things. And I often say to people, you have to let go of things to make space for the new. Because as long as we're trying to hold something in one hand and that fist is so closed, then we have no room for the new to come in.
That's right.
But that means getting comfortable with not knowing. And I think legacy organizations, and for some of us as individuals, we struggle with the unknown.
Yeah.
We want certainty. Well, there is no certainty. All we can do is be as evidence-based or as data-based as we can. And even then, at some point, you've just got to walk on faith. And in many ways, I am an intuitive leader. I value the evidence.
Yeah.
And I value the data. But I believe it was Colin Powell that said, if you have at least 60% of the information, you need to be in motion, versus waiting to get the other 40% and have 100%. Because often while we're waiting to have the 100%, we are missing opportunities. And we have to learn how to move at the speed of the marketplace. It's not like when I first joined nonprofit organizations and there were certain areas that it was nonprofit territory. Now we compete against other nonprofits. We compete against for-profit organizations. We have the equity firms out there. And if we want to continue to still be here to do good work, and I believe that for this organization, our day is not finished yet.
Yeah.
There are still people who need this set of professionals and this organization to do good work and to help improve the nutritional status of people. And therefore, we have to be willing to push ourselves out of our comfort zones, take the right risk, be willing to experiment, and be willing to innovate so that we have an opportunity to make a difference for the next generation.
So does I guess rebuilding the soul of an organization, in doing that, are you also tearing down the silos in an organization to kind of bring people together? Or how do you, yes or no, and how do you do that?
You are tearing down silos, and tearing down silos, it's not easy.
Yeah.
Because often you may tear down the silos, at least you think you've torn down the silos, only for them to be rebuilt. All I know is to continue to challenge myself and to challenge others to be the best possible versions of themselves.
Yeah.
And I put a lot of focus on leaders because I'm a firm believer that the health of an organization is dependent on the health of its leaders. And so if you have healthy leaders, you're more likely to have a healthy culture. You're more likely to have a healthy organization. But in order for leaders to be healthy, we have to continue to invest in ourselves. We have to continue to invest in our skill sets. We have to continue to invest in our competencies. You know, there were a lot of good lessons that were learned through COVID around the importance of being compassionate and empathetic leaders. And I do worry that as we are now in this post-COVID world, that we're losing some of those good leaders, those good lessons rather that we learned during COVID, and we're reverting back to our focus solely being on the bottom line. Every organization, regardless of what type of organization it is, has a bottom line. But part of that bottom line has to be, how do you take care of people? Whether those are the people within your organization, your members, your member leaders, your volunteers, your staff, or whether it's the people that you impact on the outside, the public, your clients. We've got to stay focused on what is the bottom line, what's the return on investment for the hard work that we do. Now, I don't want to make anyone believe that I've done this well all the time, because I haven't. And there's probably someone listening to this right now saying, well, I know she dropped the ball on XYZ. And to that individual, I would say, you're right. I did drop the ball on XYZ. But I'd like to think that I've picked the ball up and I've dusted myself off. Because, you know, as long as you've got breath in your body, you have a chance to continue to make a difference.
Yeah, and if you don't drop the ball here or there, how are you going to know how to pick the ball up or
That's
teach
correct.
somebody else how to pick the ball up?
That's correct. And if you're not ruffling feathers, then perhaps you're not pushing the envelope far enough.
Yeah. So I heard a lot about your closing keynote at the last Fancy. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, I missed it. But can you just give me like the cliff notes of what you spoke about? Because I heard it was epic.
Oh my gosh, that was like months ago. You know, I will say that I was in the zone at Fancy. I talked about the importance. I've spoken to a lot of individuals since I've joined this organization. One of the things that was important to me was to do listening sessions. And I've probably spoken to about 400 individuals, whether in group settings or one-on-one. And so I had a sense that there is a need for healing to occur within the organization. And I don't think that's unusual. You could say that's something that it needs to occur in many of our organizations. There's also the sense of focus. We often try to do so much and be everything to everybody, and then we just don't have the impact that we desire because we're diluting our impact. And so I talked about the house of nutrition and dietetics and the components of the house and I had all the various components stand up. And so this kind of goes to your comment, your question earlier about breaking down silos. It's recognizing that no matter what part of the body we are, we're important. Whatever part of the house of nutrition of dietetics we are, we're an important part. We just all have different roles.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean because my role is one thing and your role is something else that it's any less important. And that the beauty of our ability to continue to have an impact and to have our impact really shown and recognized to the degree we want it to be recognized is for all parts of the body to work together towards a common vision for the organization. So I think in essence, it may not have the same power as it did when it was delivered from the stage, but in essence, those were the thoughts that I articulated.
That's amazing. I remember, it's kind of a funny story. I was applying for a position at one of my old school districts I worked at, and I kind of took that same theme about the body, different body parts, and everybody working together to create something special, or to really win, right? To be innovative and disruptive and to be successful. And it ended up getting me the job. So I guess I was right in line with that.
Yeah, it was. And I'm just a firm believer of it. You will bring skills to an opportunity that I will never be able to envision, that I will never be able to excel at. And I will bring different skills. We all have different superpowers.
Yeah.
And so understanding what's our sweet spot, it is so much easier to build upon someone's strengths than trying to help them overcome the things that they're not the best at.
Yeah, I know a lot of people, they tend to focus on their weaknesses and turn them into strengths. But I'm like, if I'm weak at something, let me pass off this thing that I'm weak at, or hire someone that can do it better than me, and let me focus on my strengths and just doing the things that nobody else can do, like I can do it, right?
Right. So that really goes back to something we talked about earlier, is making sure you're surrounding yourself with the best possible people. And that doesn't mean people who are exactly like you.
Yeah. You need different body parts.
You need different body parts. You need people who have different skill sets, different competencies, different superpowers. And then your job as a leader is then how do you create an environment so all the body parts thrive?
How do you?
It's not always easy. It's, sometimes, one, you've got to be open to being challenged. And there are days when I don't want to be challenged. But that's part of creating that culture of curiosity, that culture of understanding that failure is okay. And if you say that failure is okay, then you can't fire someone the first time they make a mistake.
If you're not failing, you're not trying.
Yeah, if you're not failing, you're not trying. I think it also means pushing people beyond what they believe they're capable of doing. Because often you can see the value that people bring. Often you can see that the uniqueness that people bring than what they can see themselves. And people do that for me.
Yeah.
I had individuals who could see things in me before I could see it in myself.
Story of my life.
Yeah, so that ability to be able to assess and say, okay, you know what? I really wish this person had XYZ skill set, but that's not what they have. But let me figure out, is there a way for me to take the ABC that they do so well and to be able to leverage it on behalf of the organization?
Oh, I love it. You are just so full of knowledge. Thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me today, give me the opportunity to speak with you, get to know you. And just in closing, anything you want to share with the world?
With the world? Oh, I have a platform to share with the world. I think what I would share with people is to be true to self, to know your value. Don't ever let anyone undercut your value, and know that you're good enough. Stop having imposter syndrome. Stop believing you got to have 9 degrees and 100 certifications to be able to go for that dream job. Just know that you're good enough. You got everything inside of you that you need to succeed and be the leader that you desire to be.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much for your time. I hope this is the first of many conversations we get to have. And you've been watching the Next Up podcast.